4 live games on Sky Sports this weekend, the opening weekend of the Scottish Premiership. We're at Tynecastle, we're at Tannadice, we're at Celtic Park and McDiarmid Park. But it's not all about the Scottish Premiership. What about Conor Gallagher? We'll get the latest on his potential move after this.
Conor Gallagher's future has been big news all week. Now he has the weekend to decide on Atletico Madrid's offer. After his sparkling performances at the Euros, Mark Guehi is a wanted man. Newcastle United have contacted Crystal Palace over a deal for the defender. Hello there, welcome along to the Transfer Show. Michael Bridge and Mark McAdam are here with me. Good evening, gents. To look at the top stories and many, many more. Yet another of England's Euro 2024 squad could be on the move in the window. We're live to Liverpool's tour of the United States as the future of Joe Gomez comes under the spotlight. Tottenham sold Harry Kane almost a year ago, and they still haven't really replaced him. We'll look at what they need as Ange Postecoglou craves a goal scorer. Fulham have a new record signing on board this evening, and after that big deal for Emile Smith-Rowe, there could be more new faces through the door at Craven Cottage. But there really is only one place to start, and that is with Conor Gallagher's future. And things look like they're getting a little bit unsavoury at Stamford Bridge. It feels like Gallagher has been edging towards an exit from Chelsea for a couple of seasons now. But this time, it could be for real. Mark, Michael, welcome along again. Mark, let's start with you. How soon could we find out if Conor Gallagher is indeed on his way out at Chelsea?
Well, we say potentially this weekend there could be a big decision made. However, it could rumble on into next week as well. It's always safe to say there's one big transfer saga over the course of the summer, and it feels like at the moment it centres around Conor Gallagher, because we are getting information almost on an hourly basis to change and contradict what we've been told previously. It's a very movable feast. Now, the latest information is that Atletico Madrid had agreed a deal with Chelsea this week worth, we believe, 40 million euros, which is around 34 million pounds. However, there was no forthcoming situation with regards to a medical or him travelling out to Madrid, which leaves us to believe that he is thinking about this potential offer from Atletico Madrid. The information we have this afternoon is that Madrid have given Conor Gallagher until the end of the weekend to decide whether he is interested in joining Diego Simeone's side. Chelsea do not want him to run down his contract. He is into the final year of his Chelsea contract at the moment, so therefore next summer could leave on a free. Like Rudiger did, like Christensen did, Chelsea absolutely don't want that situation. He is, of course, a player that has been playing this summer for Gareth Southgate in England, so he's not been on Chelsea's pre-season tour. He's been allowed a little bit of additional time off, but he is due back at Cobham, the training ground, on Monday. Chelsea's first team are due back on Wednesday. So, yeah, that's the situation with regards to the Atletico Madrid side of things. But, of course, there are always two sides to every coin.
Yeah, we'll come to that in a moment. Michael, Atletico Madrid, as Mark has been explaining, have got a deal agreed. But with 4 weeks to go until deadline day today, is there a chance he could yet remain in the Premier League, be it at Chelsea or another Premier League club?
Yes, as you mentioned, Chelsea is his current club, where, you know, he was captain for the vast majority last season under Mauricio Pochettino. I, yourself, Darmesh and other colleagues speaking to Mauricio nearly every week, talking about Conor Gallagher. We talked about him last summer, we talked about him last January, and I think all in all, he had a pretty good season last year compared to the Chelsea midfielders, you know, and the Chelsea fans like him. Actually, no, I'll go one further. The majority of Chelsea fans love him. Comparing him to the other midfielders, you know, the fans like him a lot. That's him there, of course. But look, we know there's the chance that he could stay at Chelsea, but we also know that there's interest from Aston Villa and Tottenham Hotspur. Now, Tottenham Hotspur and Chelsea don't usually do deals, but football changes, boardrooms change. And I was talking about there, wasn't I, just about the comparison maybe with the midfielders and the influence he has. On the two players on the right-hand side are over £100 million footballers, aren't they? I mean, they were record signings for Chelsea. He played a lot of games, 37 out of the 38 games. There's plenty to ponder for Conor Gallagher. This is a player who does not want to sit on a bench. So he has a lot of this thinking to do. But of course, now, we talked about interest from Aston Villa and Tottenham. Whether he was keen on a move to Aston Villa, we're not sure. Tottenham potentially, but what we do know is Chelsea will demand a lot more money from those two clubs than they are from Atletico Madrid.
I was going to say, it's not the same package, is it? The 40 million euros is for Atletico Madrid. Chelsea do not want to sell to a Premier League rival. And if one of those clubs you mentioned comes to the Chelsea table to say, let's have a look at a deal for Conor Gallagher, it's not going to be on those terms because they are very reluctant to strengthen one of their rivals. And I think that's an important thing to point out here. Whilst we've got a starting point for Madrid, that's not necessarily the same starting point for another Premier League side.
Mark, you mentioned before that this story keeps developing. Well, I can tell you that one source has told Sky Sports News that Chelsea made 2 contract offers to Conor Gallagher. It's understood both of those offers were identical. So they were the 2-year deal plus the 1-year option. The first offer, we're told, came 4 days before the start of Euro 2024, when Gallagher, we think, had the chance to join Aston Villa. I know, Michael, you mentioned there was interest there, but didn't want to take up that chance to join Aston Villa. The other one came this week, before Chelsea indeed agreed a deal with Atletico Madrid on those reduced terms at around £34 million. As far as Gallagher is concerned, we're told that he is open to signing a long-term contract at Chelsea. That's in line with the contract lengths that are offered to the other Chelsea midfielders, 2 of the ones that you just mentioned there, Michael, a case in point in Enzo Fernandez and in Moises Caicedo. But if a deal cannot be agreed with Chelsea, then we're told that Gallagher will continue to assess all of his options, and we expect one of those options to remain Atletico Madrid and that £34 million bid that has been agreed and that remains on the table. What do you make of all that, Mark?
It certainly seems unsavoury. I think you look at the situation there. We looked at the metrics on yesterday's transfer show, and Conor Gallagher is the standout midfielder at Chelsea last season. He ranked either first or second for everything when it came to winning the ball back, creating chances, winning the ball high up the pitch, his passing, his minutes. He was captain fantastic on many occasions, and clearly Mauricio Pochettino valued him so highly that he was prepared to hand him the armband at Stamford Bridge. But we're getting one piece of information from one side, we're getting another piece of information from another side, and you get the feeling that somewhere in the middle actually is a player of Chelsea captain calibre who has come through that system. He wants to be at Chelsea, he wants to remain at Chelsea, he's open to signing a new contract. But yet he's almost being used as a commodity, so they don't lose money if he goes for a free. There'll be 100% offset against PSR, so there's a willingness from Chelsea to try and generate some funds to reinvest. And it feels like that man in the middle there is not really being thought about in this situation, and this isn't what you want to see. And Chelsea fans certainly won't want to see something like this, will they, Michael?
No. What's interesting is this as well, maybe we're not talking enough about maybe Enzo Maresca and what he wants. We talked about, we haven't mentioned it, Trevor Chalobah not being part of their tour of the United States. Is it Enzo Maresca basically saying, these are the players I don't really want, I'm the head coach, in terms of the transfer fees, that has nothing to do with me?
There was one piece of information that we've also been given, and that was with regards to Enzo Maresca and his identity and style of football that he wants to bring to Chelsea for next season, which perhaps will be a little bit different to what Mauricio Pochettino had. And there was a line saying and suggesting that Conor Gallagher may not find himself in that Chelsea starting 11 because he is not the right type of midfielder that Enzo Maresca wants for this new look Chelsea as well. Now, some will say that's just Chelsea saying, look, you're not going to play so much, so actually you need to go. However, it also may be an element of truth there because Enzo Maresca's brought in Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall from Leicester, who's a player who he does know and likes and wants to play. We also know Caicedo. We also know, on the other hand, you've got Enzo Fernandez, who are £100 million plus players. So therefore, you look at that situation and think, with a new head coach, game time may be limited. And it leaves you to that one situation we keep going back to. Unsavoury, unpleasant. It doesn't feel like a nice situation, but needs to be solved quite quickly because Chelsea don't want this to dominate their summer.
Yeah, I mean, there's one of two ways to look at it. We look at it on face value and we say Chelsea are helping out Conor Gallagher. They are agreeing a deal on reduced terms with Atletico Madrid, and they're allowing him to continue his career away from Chelsea. The cynic in people will say, well, actually, Chelsea are trying to drive out Conor Gallagher by offering him a 2-year contract plus a 1-year option when the norm, it seems to be at the club, is to offer long-term contracts of 7 years plus that year option. I'm going to predict that we're not going to hear the last of this story in this transfer window. But let's go from Conor Gallagher to one of his England teammates at Euro 2024 and one of the star performers for Gareth Southgate out there in Germany. And it is, of course, this Crystal Palace centre-back, Marc Guehi. Michael, look, it was inevitable that bids were going to come in even before the Euros, I think you'd have to say, given the season he'd had, but then how he performed in the Euros as well, only really highlighted what he can do. Newcastle United, what can you tell us? Is this one we should have seen coming?
Yeah, I think in terms of interest in Marc Guehi, that was definite. It was what club is going to strike first. And it looks like Eddie Howe's Newcastle United. We know Newcastle are in for a centre-half. Now, what do we know about Marc Guehi before the European Championships? A very good young defender. What do we know now? A very, very good young defender who can play at international level, who really impressed for England. So, now, before the Euros started, my understanding was Palace will be looking at around £60 million mark. I would imagine Crystal Palace will put that a little bit higher now after his performances. He has gone up another level. When you perform like that at international level, your stock will rise. And Crystal Palace will be waiting, I'm sure, to make more clubs to become involved. We know Eddie Howe has made centre-back a real priority this summer. But what I also know is that the selling club Crystal Palace will want to keep him. They recruit ever so well. There are many clubs who don't look at the EFL, and they really should. And Crystal Palace, under Dougie Freedman and Steve Parish, always do. Ebi Eze, Michael Elise. And then you look at Marc Guehi, was a Chelsea youngster, and there are reports that Chelsea might have a sell-on. They might have the opportunity to potentially match any deals going forward. But what we do know, they've got a very, very good player on their hands. The issue Palace will have, and this is where they might have to consider some big offers, he has 2 years left on his contract.
Mark, it's Newcastle we're talking about here who have made this approach to Crystal Palace. Why would Newcastle in particular want a player like Marc Guehi?
Well, for a start, with the performances for England over the course of this summer, as Michael touched upon, he was the standout and probably most consistent performer for Gareth Southgate over the course of this summer. Missed just the one game when he was suspended. We know that Eddie Howe's in the market for a centre-back, particularly on the right-hand side, and Marc Guehi would fit the right type of profile for player that Eddie Howe likes to recruit and work with. He's someone that's excellent on the ball, comfortable in possession, great defender, great aerially, great profiling character. His personality is outstanding. You only hear really good positive things. And Newcastle want to strengthen that defence. They've obviously been building this club over the course of the last 2.5 years since the arrival of PIF. They're wanting to compete at the very highest level. Obviously, Eddie Howe punched them into the top four in that Champions League season. Last season didn't go as well, but they suffered huge injury problems. So again, when you look at what they're trying to do, they want to improve their 11, and Marc Guehi would certainly do that. In terms of the deal, it's an expensive one. And we can talk quite heavily about the financial situation at Newcastle. PSR is still going to be a big problem, and people will be saying, but no, the PSR deadline was on June the 30th. The finances reset on the 1st of July. Yes, they did. However, you can still only spend and lose over 105 million over 3 years. So that figure is still the same. The rules are still in place. So whilst you can spend the money, you can't have huge losses. And because PIF have invested heavily in Newcastle over the last 2.5 years, the spending has got to a point where they can't just go and recklessly spend much more money. This summer, they're going to have to be clever, they're going to have to be creative, and if it means potentially putting all their eggs in one basket and saying, that's the one player that is going to improve our starting 11, then let's target him. Of course, we have to remember these are just early talks. Newcastle have made initial contact with Crystal Palace. There is still a long way to go, and like Michael rightly says, other clubs could look at this situation and think, OK, we want a piece of this pie, let's get to the table and see what the deal is.
Just before we go to the break, Mark, you're talking about them wanting to strengthen in central defence. There are other areas that they want to strengthen as well, and a deal for a player to come to Newcastle looks close. Who is it and how far along are we?
Yeah, William Usula, 20-year-old, currently at Sheffield United. Yesterday, at the start of the transfer show, we reported advanced talks. Today, deal agreed between the two clubs. It's 10 million with 5 million in add-ons. And a lot of I guess Newcastle fans will be looking at this saying that this isn't the type of player we need. This is someone who is young, strong, powerful, raw, but has massive potential. One key thing in this whole situation is Jason Tindall, when he got sacked from Bournemouth when he was manager in the Championship, he went and worked at Sheffield United as a coach. So he has worked up close and personal with Usula. He knows the qualities he has. And you just have to look at a lot of those players at Newcastle that have come through the setup there and been improved by Eddie Howe. Newcastle fans need to remember that's what Eddie, Jason, Stephen, Dan and Simon do, and Graham. They improve players. They work with players on the training pitch. That's part of the remit as coaches. That's the number one thing. So he would be a player, not potentially for now, but certainly someone that would be in and around that squad and could push Ishak and push Callum Wilson for that number 9. He can also come in off the left-hand side as well. And the final point on that as well, when you buy a player for 10 million with amortisation, that will cost Newcastle essentially £2 million a season over 5 years, plus some add-ons. The Mark Guehi situation is very different. Just say, for argument's sake, it's £60 million. That's £12 million a year over 5 years. And this is why the striker is an easy one for Newcastle to do with their PSR. The Guehi thing can be a little bit more complicated.
And there's a good chance Newcastle's best signing this summer won't even be on the pitch. Paul Mitchell.
Possibly.
Very highly regarded sporting director who replaced Dan Ashworth. We'll wait and see.
Michael, Mark, fantastic stuff so far. Don't go anywhere. Still plenty to come on the transfer show. And coming up, we will be discussing Manchester United's pursuit of 2 Bayern Munich players, Matthias de Ligt and Nusret Mazraoui. Stay with us. Yeah, welcome back to the hour-long transfer show. Liverpool have been quiet in the transfer market this season. They've yet to make a major new signing under boss Arne Slot. They face Manchester United in the penultimate game of their pre-season tour of the USA on Sunday. Anton Tolui is out in South Carolina for us now. And there he is. Anton, where are we with potential outgoings, first of all, at Liverpool?
Yeah, look, I think things are starting to progress with outgoings as Arne Slot sort of assesses his squad and the options that are available. That we do know, for example, that Liverpool are open to offers for Joe Gomez, and that seems like quite a stark headline, doesn't it? But it's a situation I think that is quite grown up, really, to be brutally honest. Gomez has slipped back to fourth choice in terms of centre-back. He's behind Jarell Quansah, Virgil van Dijk and, of course, Ibrahim Konate. And 17 starts in the Premier League last season for him, but most of those came filling in at full-back, and Liverpool are very happy with their options there. Now, Liverpool would love to start the season with a player as experienced and, quite frankly, as good as Joe Gomez in their squad, but they also realise that the player has ambitions, and obviously, the player has a market value which they would be, silly not to at least sort of capitalise on. So again, it's a very sort of, it's a very fluid situation. I think they're going to see what interest is out there for Joe Gomez. They have a certain valuation, and obviously, look, the player is well aware of what's going on. He's had talks with the club. He's had talks with Arne Slot before he came out. He'll be back next week after his break from the Euros, and again speak to the manager then. So it's a very, like I said, sort of very adult situation, very grown-up situation that may well see Joe Gomez move on for a fee, but only if both parties are happy. So that's the major outgoing potentially with Liverpool. And also, I suppose, around the other players in the squad, you've got Sepp van den Berg, again, another young centre-back at Liverpool. He's getting interest from Bundesliga. Liverpool have set a value of around £20 million for him. But again, if they don't get that value met, they will happily have him as part of the first-team squad going forward, because he has impressed during pre-season. And two left-backs as well in Owen Beck, who's got loan interest from Celtic and from QPR. And Luke Chambers, the other young left-back in the squad, is expected to rejoin Wigan on loan at the end of this US tour.
Yeah, Anton, you're talking about departures and potential departures at Liverpool. Liverpool fans who are watching this want to know about potential arrivals at Anfield, of course. It's been notable that there haven't been any notable arrivals so far. Is there a chance and any indication that that's about to change?
Well, look, we've spoken to Arne Slot since we've been out here. We've spoken to Liverpool CEO Billy Hogan while we've been out here as well. And the message is kind of like, there's no need to panic as of yet. Look, Liverpool are assessing the options both internally with the squad they have. That's what Slot wanted to do. That's the whole purpose of this tour from a footballing perspective. And obviously they want time to assess what is going on in the market. Look, Hogan insists that the budget is there, and Liverpool kind of have suggested that is the case because they did make a move for Anthony Gordon before the financial end of the year, back in June, didn't they, when Gomez was one of the players that was offered to Newcastle in a potential deal that didn't end up happening. But obviously any outgoings, like the likes of Gomez or van den Berg, will affect any potential budget that goes ahead, and obviously will add to that if Liverpool do decide to make moves in the market. I think the other thing as well is the fact that Liverpool have got a big contract situation affecting three of their best players in Virgil van Dijk, Mo Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. And if the club decides to commit to them long-term, or the other way around, the players decide to commit to the club long-term, that affects budgets and plans going forward as well. So lots of things in play with Liverpool at the moment, but I think the message is no need to panic just yet.
Anton, thanks very much indeed. Mark, Anton touched on it there just at the end of his live when he was talking about those three players, and we've been talking about them throughout this summer's transfer window and in advance of this summer's transfer window, that in the inbox, top of it, looks like it was going to be the futures of Trent, the futures of Virgil van Dijk and Mohamed Salah as well.
Yeah, well, Mo Salah was the subject of that very late bid from the Saudi Pro League last summer, and of course Liverpool rebuffed that. It'd be interesting to see whether they revisit their interest in such a high-profile player that still has so much to offer the game. You've mentioned all three players. All three of those players have been key players for Jurgen Klopp. They're Premier League winners. They know how to get the job done. And there'll be players that Liverpool won't want to lose. Of course, I think from the players' perspective as well, they'll just be looking and going, right, FSG have employed Michael Edwards. We've got a new sporting director in Richard Hughes and a new head coach in Arne Slot. What are these guys like to work with? Do I want to be a part of this new era at Liverpool? Do I enjoy the coaching under Arne Slot? Do I want to commit my future? So it will be the same on both sides. And of course, Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes with the head coach will be looking at the situation and thinking, right, let's just assess where we're at. Are these the right types of players for us to go on this next part of the journey? Or are there better players out there for potentially less money? Because you know that if you secure Virgil van Dijk, Mo Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold down to new contracts, they're not going to be cheap deals to do, because they are, you know, very, very good players, highly coveted, all really in the peak of their career. So that will be the number one thing. If you lose those three players, you've got three big holes. If you keep those three players, you don't need to do quite as much work in the transfer window. And I think that's the thing Liverpool fans at the moment are just struggling with, because they are so
Mark,
desperate.
Let me interrupt you there. The contracts will be big, but if you're saying replacing them, how much is it going to cost?
It could cost...
Well, replace three players like that.
A top-class centre-back is between 50 and 70 million. A top-class right-back is probably between 30 and 50 million. And someone like Mo Salah, who can score goals out from the right-hand side, 70, 80, 90 million. So that's £200 million, plus agents' fees and wages. Huge deals to do. So keeping a hold of those players might be the best thing for them to do. But it's just that time that both camps need to assess the situation.
Absolutely. And you talk about that. There was a player I looked at the other night when they played Arsenal, who I think could really have a massive season in the Premier League, Harvey Elliott.
Yep.
Really, really impressed the other night, and I know Arne Slot mentioned him as well. But sometimes it's about keeping the key players and instead of certainly bringing players in. And how many teams at the moment would you say, yeah, we're ready to go now? Maybe Arsenal?
Yeah.
Maybe Villa? Man United aren't ready. Chelsea certainly aren't ready. Spurs aren't ready. So Liverpool certainly aren't the only ones.
OK, well, their next opponents are Manchester United on that US tour. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And let's talk about Manchester United, Mark. We know that they're pursuing both Matthias de Ligt, a central defender, and Nusayr Mazraoui from Bayern Munich. Where are we with these deals? Have they moved on at all?
They're moving on, but slowly. The two clubs in communication and have been in dialogue for some time over the course of this summer. Like you rightly say, the 26-year-old fullback Nusayr Mazraoui, a target for Erik ten Hag, and the centre-back Matthias de Ligt, 24 years old, former Ajax man. It's not really worked out for him at Bayern Munich. Both players, funnily enough, have the same agent, so it makes these deals quite easy for Manchester United to do, because you've got one representative to deal with and one club to deal with. And these are two key targets. We know that they want to strengthen in centre-back and at full-back. The full-back situation slightly different because of the Aaron Wan-Bissaka discussion that happens with West Ham at the moment. That's one to keep an eye on, because dialogue continues there, but we believe there's some common ground between what West Ham want to pay and what Manchester United would like for Wan-Bissaka, who goes into the final year of his Old Trafford contract. And we know that they have been looking at centre-backs. One thing that's important to point out with this situation is that the Lenny Yoro injury has no bearing on them signing an additional centre-back. The big thing that is at play here is that Manchester United have a big squad. So they can't just go and sign 2 or 3 players, because fitting them into the 25 would be tricky. And whilst they're fairly strong with PSR, they don't have to worry too much about money, although they need to keep an eye on it. The main focus is when they lose someone, they've got someone coming in. So it's almost a one-in, one-out policy. There is a gap between what Manchester United want to pay and what Bayern Munich wants, but we believe that that's not an insurmountable gap. There is some ground there that they can get to make sure everyone's happy. I think the key thing for Manchester United fans, both players open to the move to Old Trafford.
Yeah, Michael, Mark mentioned it there about Aaron Wan-Bissaka, so a potential outgoing. Are there any other outgoings that we should be looking out for the rest of this window?
Yeah, certainly one who's been a key member of Manchester United's first team is Scott McTominay. Fulham very keen. They went back with an improved offer. It was worth 20 million. We understand it fell short of Manchester United's valuation. Got to be honest, I'm not really surprised by that. There is interest still there from Fulham, but we understand they'd be prepared to walk away if they can't agree a fee. Now, we heard from Erik ten Hag overnight on Scott McTominay, and I think this is really interesting. Have a listen to this.
I'm so pleased with the performance from Scott McTominay, and I'm so pleased to have him in my squad. From type of person, such a huge impact on the team, team performances, team spirit, and of course now we play him more in his advanced position, what suits him obviously much better. He's so important, making goals for our team, and very pleased and to work with him and to have him in my squad.
Yeah, those are thoughts of Eric Ten Hag. He's bigging up Scott McTominay. He scored 10 goals for Eric Ten Hag in what was an otherwise disappointing season for the rest of the players at Manchester United. He was one of the positives, you'd have to say. But if they can get money for him, I mean, Mark, you mentioned this before. This is all about budgets. This is all about squad space in particular. So that's why, as you rightly said, we don't think it's going to be dependent on someone like Lenny Yoro's injury that they need to replace him. They need to replace someone who's going to leave the club. So if they do manage to do a deal with Fulham or another club, Galatasaray are interested as well in McTominay, they will accelerate plans to recruit a midfielder. We know that there's dialogue open with PSG over Manuel Ugarte, but the prices don't match just now. As well as a permanent move, we think United are exploring a loan with an option and an obligation as well. PSG want to do the deal because they're about to bring in João Neves. It's all like a holding pattern here, or dominoes, whichever one you want. I'm going to go holding pattern. That's my new one for this transfer window. Ugarte, we think, is open to a move. We know that they've had interest in Youssouf Fofana from Monaco, from Real Sociedad's Martin Zubimendi, and one to watch as well, which might not require necessarily someone to leave, is Sofian Amrabat, because he was actually on loan there last season. They had a €20 million option. They don't want to take up that option, but they want to negotiate with Fiorentina. And again, a loan hasn't been ruled out either. So, yeah, another quiet day in the life of Manchester United. But I'm sure we'll be hearing more on the incomings and outgoings at United. But coming up next, we will take a look around at the ins and outs from every Premier League club when these two gentlemen do the Premier League wrap, including a club record signing for Fulham. Stay with us.
Right, it's Friday night. Let's get this transfer wrap underway. Come on.
Where shall we start?
Arsenal?
Let's start with... There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
The magic's not quite there on a Friday night. Let's start with Arsenal. Emile Smith-Rowe's Emirates career is over. Arsenal have sold him to Fulham in a deal that had been in the pipeline for a while now, an initial £27 million that could rise to 34.
Aston Villa defender Diego Carlos could be Smith-Rowe's teammate before too long. Initial talks have taken place over a deal with Fulham, who are getting busy in this window.
Now, Bournemouth have had no contact from anyone regarding Dominic Solanke and have no desire to sell their star man. They're working on incomings, but are content with the squad they currently have. Goalkeeper and full-back are the positions they're looking at.
Well, Brentford's striker situation remains perhaps the most pressing issue. Ivan Toney is now into the final year of his deal and looking to move, but his replacement, Igor Thiago, is injured already and facing months out. So far, no offers this window for Toney, so no decision to make.
Now, after selling Pascal Gross to Borussia Dortmund, Brighton are still looking to add to their squad over the next few weeks.
And Chelsea are holding talks with Conor Gallagher as he decides on his future. Atletico Madrid have given him until the end of the weekend to make a call on a potential move to join them.
On to Crystal Palace now. Mark Guehi is the latest Palace asset to be targeted by a rival. Newcastle want the defender who shone at Euro 2024. Talks, though, at an early stage.
After bringing in defender Jake O'Brien this week, there are reports linking them with Calvin Phillips. They need midfield options after selling Amadou Onana to Villa.
Jorge Cuenca has been having a Fulham medical at the club's pre-season training camp in Portugal. It's understood he completed the first part yesterday ahead of his move from Villarreal.
As Ipswich return to the Premier League after 20 years, they'd like to take Blackburn's Sami Szmodic with them, but there's still no agreement in place.
Leicester boss Steve Cooper is still assessing his squad over pre-season, whilst recruiting new players is on the agenda. Trimming the squad and cutting costs is also a part of this summer's remit.
To Liverpool now, and Joe Gomez heads a list of players who could be on the move this window. He returns to the club next week after his break following the Euros. Left-back Owen Beck is also attracting interest.
Manchester City are still relaxed about their summer plans. The squad they've taken on tour reflects how many of their players are still away after the Euros and the Copa America. But they'll be back to work soon, with the season now just 2 weeks away.
That's flown by. Right, there's a decision for Manchester United to make on Scott McTominay. Fulham's improved bid of £20 million looks like it won't be enough, but there is a feeling a deal can be done. Erik ten Hag has spoken glowingly about the midfielder's influence last season.
Newcastle are closing in on a deal for the young striker William Osula from Sheffield United. The fee being mentioned is £10 million plus a further £5 in add-ons.
Well, Nottingham Forest are being linked with Argentina winger Nicolas Gonzalez, who plays for Fiorentina. Forest signed another winger, Jota Silva, yesterday.
Russell Martin is relaxed on the current state of his club's recruitment, but admits they need more players as they return to the Premier League.
Tottenham head coach Ange Postecoglou says the club are light in the attacking department. We've reported a versatile forward is their priority.
Now, West Ham are currently working on 5 potential deals. Crescencio Somerville, Nicholas Fulkrug, John Duran and Aaron Wan-Bissaka have all been moving this week and been spoken about by West Ham. Well, there's also advanced talks happening over the Argentina midfielder Guido Rodriguez. He's a free agent.
Now, it's a month since Wolves secured a big fee for Max Kilman, who went to West Ham, but no new centre-half has yet arrived in his absence. Everyone has 4 weeks left to recruit, with deadline day August the 30th.
Yep, 4 weeks to go. More from the Premier League to come, but the Scottish Premiership begins live on Sky Sports tomorrow. And there's lots for Rangers to do if they're to push Celtic. We'll get into their issues shortly, but manager Philippe Clement has signed a new contract until 2028. We can hear from him now.
I feel good here. I love this place. I love this club. I love the city. I love the fans. I love the atmosphere in Ibrox, or the fans who are in the away games. So it was my feeling also to do it longer term, and not to sit and wait until something more interesting comes in my mind. No, I really want to give all my best every second for this club because I love to be here. So we decided that end of May, and then it's about how can you put that in a contract, that it's for both sides in a good way, and that you feel that you think the same way.
Yeah, those are the thoughts of the Rangers boss, Philippe Clement. Michael, so much to deal with at Rangers. There always is when you're trying to chase down Celtic, but that contract has to be good news for Rangers, doesn't it?
I think so, Darmish, because it just gives Clement stability, and it says if they don't start too well, they're not going to panic. There's been a lot of upheaval already. They're playing at Hampden for the next few months. That's not a great start to the new season. They've got a tough game against Hearts. That's a really tough opener. But Clement deserves time. He took over from Michael Beale last season, won a load of games. It's not his squad. Won the Scottish League Cup. Yes, in the end, they fell short in the league. Yes, they lost the Scottish Cup final. But I believe he deserves time. And this contract just gives him a little bit of stability. And he seems very happy with that.
Yeah, just on signings, you said that it wasn't his squad. Well, he's trying to build his own squad now, is Philippe Clement. They've signed Robin Proper. How much of a boost is that to Rangers? Good signing?
Yeah, I think it's a proper signing. I really do, but that's all right. No, I mean, the Twente supporters are devastated. They feel they've lost their real leader there. Obviously, he's replacing Conor Gallagher. Proper's never played outside of the Netherlands before, so it's a big move for him. But this is a player Clement wants. These are the players he's trying to bring in, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. They've also signed Vladev Cherny as a winger, but they need a bit more firepower up front. But it's in Scotland, you know, you look at it, second feels like last if you finish second to your greatest rivals. But Rangers have a really important Champions League qualifier midweek as well. So in Scotland, these qualifiers, it all starts really early. And if you lose or you draw your first couple of games in the Scottish Premiership, it's unbelievable to think, but you really are playing catch-up.
OK, good luck with this next question. Out of Celtic and Rangers, who is the best prepared heading into the new season?
Well, I'd probably say Celtic because they're playing in their stadium. But I feel like they've made a very good replacement. Joe Hart's left. Kasper Schmeichel, I think, is a very adequate replacement. They've had a good tour of the United States. I think playing Manchester City, beating Chelsea. Now, they've only signed Paulo Bernardo, the only outfield signing. But they've got a manager in Brendan Rodgers who knows the league ever so well. He's an experienced manager. He's a very good manager. What we do know is both Celtic Rangers are going to strengthen before the window closes. Celtic need to do so much better in Europe next season. On top of what they win domestically, they've got to do better in Europe. Rangers have got a lot to do as well. It's very intriguing.
Yeah, and both Rangers and Celtic will be live on Sky Sports this weekend. Rangers' first game of the season against Hearts is one of our 4 live Scottish Premiership games on Sky Sports. Coverage from Tynecastle starts at 11:30 tomorrow. Elsewhere, Dundee United host rivals Dundee. That's from 12:30 on Sunday, and it's followed by the turn of the champion Celtic, who face Kilmarnock from 4 p.m. And on Monday, St Johnstone take on Aberdeen. Coverage from that one gets underway at 7:30. Coming up, we'll take a look at both North London clubs as they search for a striker. Could Dominic Solanke be a solution? Yeah, welcome back to the transfer show. After spending his career at Arsenal, Emile Smith-Rowe is a Fulham player. It finally went through today. It's a club record for Fulham. £27 million initial payment. It could go up to £34 million. So Emile Smith-Rowe swapping the Emirates for Craven Cottage. But Mark, who else could be joining him there at Fulham?
Well, Fulham obviously in the market to strengthen. We've spoke already about Scott McTominay, but we know they're in the market for 2 centre-backs as well. One of them we mentioned in the wrap, Jorge Cuenca, young under-21 international for Spain. He's in the final year of his Villarreal contract. That is one player they're very much interested in. 2 players to keep an eye on as well. Diego Carlos at Aston Villa, 31-year-old, has been the subject of initial talks between Villa and Fulham. But the other 2 players I was going to mention as well, Tosin, we know, is gone. Joined Chelsea this summer on a free transfer. The other Fulham player to keep an eye on, Tim Ream, he's been linked with Charlotte of the MLS, who are managed by former Premier League manager Dean Smith. So, yeah, potentially you could see not only Tosin having left, Tim Ream also potentially heading out of the door at Craven Cottage, hence why there's that link with Diego Carlos and Jorge Cuenca.
Yeah, just on Cuenca, he's actually with the Fulham squad out there in Portugal for their pre-season training camp, and he's been having a medical. So that one looks really, really close. Michael, let's go to Tottenham now. And they seem to have a problem to solve, don't they, in that they're under their homegrown player quota. How has that affected, if anything, their pursuit of what looks like a priority position up front?
I mean, look, there's still plenty of time for Tottenham to sort that out. There might be something in that in terms of maybe a domestic base forward. What we do know is they want to spend the bulk of their money on a versatile forward. Other things are dependent elsewhere. There was talk last night about Dominic Solanke. I think my understanding that's been a long-term interest. Now, we all like a little Instagram story, don't we? And he's posted on his Instagram over the last few hours a story. No dream is too big, no goal too ambitious. Dare to dream and dare to make it reality. Now, this could mean anything, but I can't not mention it. I've seen it, I can't not mention it.
Yeah, I think that's in reference to an anime. Dom Solanke, you've seen with the face mask celebration. He's a big fan of Japanese culture, anime, manga. He spent some time in Japan over the course of this summer. So I think that's more of a reference to that particular series. But
quite apt. We
like how players can be quite cryptic in this situation. Bournemouth's stance is, of course, he's the star man. They don't want to sell him. They've had no communication or contact from any football clubs at the moment. And it would have to be a very sizable, hefty bid for Bournemouth to even consider selling their top goal scorer, who got 19 in the Premier League last season. However, everyone has a price. And I know the owner, Bill Foley, has been speaking about potential replacements, should they have to go into the market to replace him. But as things stand, they're focused on Dominic Solanke being with this squad throughout the course of this season, at the very least. He signed a decent, lengthy contract, so as far as they're concerned, not going anywhere. But this is a transfer window, and anything's possible.
Mark, I'm conscious of the time. We are running out of time. But very, very quickly on Arsenal, we talk constantly about, they need a striker. But the way this man, Mikel Arteta, plays his team, he changes his formation all the time. Kai Havertz can play there. Jesus can play there. Trossard can play there. Do they need one?
Well, you speak to any Arsenal fan and they say, yes, number 9. If we get Mikel Moreno on top of Calafiori and we add a top-class striker, Victor Gyökeres, one player that's been mentioned, Ivan Toney will be linked with them again, you'd have to say they would be the team to beat on paper at the start of the season. Quite interesting, you look at Saka, obviously plays out wide, top Premier League goal scorer for Mikel Arteta last season. Kai Havertz with 13 was second, Leandro Trossard third. None of their strikers were in the top 3 in terms of Premier League goals. Now, Arsenal fans would say that's the position we need to strengthen. Right,
let's get to West Ham. They're chasing a number of deals, 4 or 5 in fact. Michael, we've heard about Aaron Wan-Bissaka and their pursuit of him. What's the latest with Crescencio Somerville from Leeds?
Yeah, we had the second part of his West Ham medical this morning, Darmesh. So they're hoping to get this finalised soon. We might have news on it potentially maybe now Saturday morning. But what we're looking to know is he going to fly out to the USA for the remainder of their pre-season tour, or maybe stay in London now as they're coming towards near the end of their tour? A deal was agreed yesterday. Obviously, Leeds fans are devastated, but what I like reading is what a great character, what a great professional West Ham seems to be getting. So it looks like a very good signing for West Ham United.
And a development on that, he has, I'm told, completed his West Ham United medical. A formal announcement of his move from Leeds United could come in the next 24 hours. They're also after a striker, aren't they, Mark?
Yeah, potentially Nicholas Füllkrug, the 31-year-old. They tried to sign him last summer. There is dialogue between the two clubs at the moment over someone who was a star for Germany over the summer at the Euros. Another striker to keep an eye on, John Duran, Aston Villa. Contact remains between the two clubs. They've not been able to find some common ground, but another player for West Ham fans to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and just one other line, West Ham United, Guido Rodriguez, Michael.
Yes, he's a player they've been looking at. He's Argentinian and featured in the Copa America. More on that this evening. But yeah, West Ham looking to do some business. Very busy.
It looks like that they are advancing on that deal. And he comes with a bit of pedigree because he was in the Argentina squad for the World Cup win and he was in the Argentina squad for the Copa America win. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. We are out of time. Coming up on Sky Sports News, it's been another big day at the Olympic Games. More medals for Great Britain. Stay with us.